A little under a year ago, I drew this pic to participate in the Brazilian Miku trend that was going around at the time. I made a video out of it, as I sometimes do. Genuinely did not expect to get all that much traction on it, maybe a couple hundred views at most. So you can imagine my shock. Anyway, that video did very well and got in front of a lot of people, some of whom even decided to subscribe. As a thank you / celebration of hitting 500 subscribers, I decided to revisit Brazilian Miku. I'll also be narrating the video this time, just to give my thoughts and outline a little of my art process. Now, these aren't steps that I follow every single time, just some guidelines or bullet points if you prefer to think of them that way. So first we start by blocking in the basic idea of the pic. This isn't even a thumbnail sketch. It's just something very rough to get the space proportions onto metaphorical paper. And, of course, I decided to do all of this while having some of the worst art block I've ever had, so I just wind up noodling around like an idiot for way too long. Once the basic blocking is done, I import a 3D model to try and get a better idea of ratios and proportions for this. Of course, my incompetence continues and I just screw around with getting the model right for way too long. When I finally get the model to match the pose in my head, I make a new layer and start egging. This is where I just mark out the major parts of the skeleton. Major joints, rib cage, pelvis, that sort of thing. Once that is done, I conveniently ignore my skeleton to make the rough sketch. I use this screenshot from Ava to copy the basic shapes of the face. Then I reduce opacity on everything and sketch over it, trying to make it not look like complete ass. Fleshing out the skeleton goes awful, which is really just par for the course by this point. Anyway, refine the head and face a little, then draw and redraw and redraw and redraw the hands. It's at this point the art block finally starts to break, so that adding the breasts and waist goes pretty well. Then I add the shirt, bikini bottoms, and hips. Finally add the eyes and then start drawing the outlines of the pool. You can see I drew more of her legs than I needed. This is fine. This stage I don't know how much water I want to add, so having more sketch than I wind up needing is good. Then I sketch some fluid flying out of her can, sketch in some very basic water lines, then add her hair. Realistically, I think her hair would probably be braided for swimming, but it's just not Miku without those giant pigtails. Bangles, earring, and flower, and sketch is done. Now I draw a vanishing point grid for myself and some boxes which will be turned into pool chairs. Then some blobby shapes that'll become trees later. And finally, sandals and sunglasses. When adding inks and colors, I stick to this marker tool that has anti-aliasing turned off. This helps me avoid weird white spacing. I usually keep the inks for the eyes and the inks for the rest of the body separate. I find it's just easier to not have to worry about the eyes when messing around with the body lines. Let's just fast forward through all of this. Inking is inking, it's a whole subject on its own, and we don't have time to get into here. I will say that inking is a good time to add details or fix minor mistakes you didn't get to while sketching, especially if you're working digitally. Once the inking is done, I start blocking in colors for the background. I find this is the best sequence to do it. Usually I build the setting around the figure's pose, so I need the figure solidified first. But if they're colored, I get distracted. Also, at least for me, humans are more interesting to draw than backgrounds, so why not get the boring stuff out of the way before going back to the interesting stuff? When doing water, I first make a flat field of color, then add a wave pattern to it. Then I make it into a gradient, light to dark, with the darker color being the deeper it goes. But I make sure not to make it a completely even gradient, adding bands of lighter color in the dark, and vice versa. Then come these blobby shapes in white outline. Connect some of them with these more sinuous lines. And then yet more sinuous lines that almost connect. This makes for a fun pattern that approximates the scintillating pattern of light on water. Then I smudge the darks into the lights and the lights into the darks vertically, which enhances the overall wave effect. Next, I use the cloud brush to add some splotches of color just to break up any edges and keep everything from looking too even. And lastly, I duplicate the layer of my white lines and blur it to give a glow effect. Adding flat color is very boring. I just use the bucket tool. Then I erase a portion of her legs that I want to be in the water. Basically erase everything that isn't up out of the water. That done, it's on to adding flats for everything else. Honestly, getting her suntan right is the only challenging part of this. I go for a brown with lots of red and orange in it. The key to eyes is to think of the iris as a long tunnel descending into darkness, with the pupil as the darkest part. The eyeshine are like these white shapes floating in space, getting smaller as they go further down the tunnel. Next, I make a new layer to represent the paler parts of her skin, the parts that aren't tan. I also do a faded shadow and light pattern for the sunglasses lenses. The sky is really just a gradient of dark to light, like water in reverse. Only easier because I don't have to add those light blobs. Trees are really nice. Wish I'd saved all the footage of me making them. But it's different colors of this splatter spray. But it's just different colors of this splatter spray brush done in layers. You get the idea. Then I add some blobs of color underneath the water to represent parts of her body still submerged, make them blobbier and wavier as they get deeper in to represent light refraction. And I also do a soft edged erase to add to the effect of her body going deeper into the water. Now this here is just me refining the background. This is all stuff we've seen before, so let's go ahead and fast forward. It's at about this point I decide her nose is maybe a little too big, and I have to scramble to fix it. But once that's done, it's time to add shades. I usually do 2 shade passes. First is more saturated and cooler than the base color, and the second is both cooler and lower luminosity. Once the basic skin shades are down, I make a duplicate later that better matches the lighter sections of her skin. Doing the shine on her skin is much the same as shades, with me picking a desaturated, warmer version of the base skin tone. We have a little jump here because once again I forgot to turn on my recording software. I'm outlining the shades of her shirt in purple. It contrasts with both the yellow and the green, so it shows up easily. Once I have the shape of the shades how I like them, I replace the purple with dark yellows or greens as appropriate. I do this with any object that's multicolored, but not worth me separating out into separate layers. Basically, it's me being lazy again. Her bikini gets a dark blue for shading, and then onto her beads. Then I realize I accidentally bucket filled large sections of the pick with purple, and I have to scramble to save it. I tried to research popular drinks in Brazil. The biggest is this soda Guarana, but I still have no idea what it looks like outside of the can. So I just made some orange liquid. Maybe it's an orange or mango soda. Soda gets colored much like water, with the thicker portions being darker. Also, you can see that somewhere along the line I added a brick texture to the back wall. I do not remember when I did this, but it happened at some point. Anyway, the rest of this is refining the lights and shadows. Let's fast forward again. Here I'm adding fuchsia blobs in the form of water drops. I then convert the fuchsia to black, then fill in with white and then blue, and then bring back some of the white, and finally a dark blue to almost purple to really sell the idea of a drop of water. And then, because the sky was looking empty, I used a spray brush to make some clouds. Make them very much like how I make trees. Okay, now we get a little technical. I personally find that digital art, especially cartoony digital art like I draw, looks really flat without some added noise. To add that noise, we first add a basic noise texture. Duplicate it twice, and then flip one of the duplicates vertically, and then flip the other horizontally. This gives us plenty of overlap. Then the topmost layer I convert to all red by manipulating the output channels. I'm going to do the same with the others to make a blue and a green layer. Set all my layers to screen blending mode and reduce to 10% opacity. Now I make a new layer for my colors and block in a bright yellow in parts. These parts of the figure I want to pop, and then I make a dark blue on parts of the figure I want to de-emphasize. Set the whole layer to overlay and reduce to about 10% opacity. This varies from pick to pick. On it, I add a minor blush above the skin shades, but under the skin shines. Then duplicate all my color layers for Miku and Miku alone and flatten them. Take that new layer and move it above the inks layer. Clip it to the line work, set to color blend mode, and set to about 80% opacity. Next, add 2 more layers above the line work. One, I sample the shines from her skin and hair and blur those out a little so they go over the line work. And then the other is to do this sparkle effect. Now, after turning off my noise filters, I merge all visible layers into a new layer. Duplicate that layer twice. Topmost layer gets a 30-point Gaussian blurred and is set to color blend mode. The other duplicate gets a 16-point Gaussian blur and is set at 30% opacity. And absolutely last, an unsharp mask is set at radius 10 and strength 140. And that, just like that, we're done. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it, except for all the times that I forgot to record something or had to re-record something because I messed up. So yeah, that's Miku. Enjoy.